Perfect. Well, I have some questions that we'll ask you all and just kind of go down the line and share your responses. If anybody else would like to ask questions, feel free to pepper those in at any point. But my first question is, could you share some of the highlights from your experience of transitioning to OER for your course? And I know that Dr. Terwilliger has some slides here to share also, and then we'll go down the line from there.
Okay. Yeah, I just made a quick timeline of kind of how I got into this. In 2018, our provost was meeting with our computing department and mentioned he thought it would be good if every degree on campus had a coding or programming class, and we kind of agreed with that. And our College of Business has adopted that, so now every business major requires a coding class. But we didn't have one that would kind of suit just general students. All of our programming classes were meant for our majors. So after about a year of discussion, we created this course, CS 101. Offered it the first time fall of 2019. We had 10 students, and then each semester that we offered it, I did a Qualtrics survey and said, what did you think of the course, and got feedback about books and stuff. And I had a hard time finding a book that worked for that class, because there's lots of Python and programming textbooks, but most of them are for people that already know how to be a programmer and they just want to learn Python, or somebody that wants to learn Python and then go into programming after that. So there weren't any really good textbooks I could find that were geared for students that would get a programming class and learn to program and problem solve, and then that would be probably the last programming class they would ever take. And I found a book that was okay, and it was $170, and students really didn't like it, and they didn't use it, and a lot of them didn't buy it. But I still used it for a year and a half and got lots of grumbling from students. So then after about a year and a half, I said, I'm just going to write my own book. And that took a couple months, but I aligned it exactly with what I wanted to do with the course for the students. And then summer 2021, I had the bookstore print off my book, and they got a vendor that made photocopies. So they sold these at the campus bookstore for $33. I thought it was going to be like $10 or something to make a bunch of photocopies and sell it, but $33 was better than $170. And then, can you forward one slide?
Yeah.
And I surveyed the class and asked them, are you buying the book, are you using the book? And just from the $170 book to this one that was geared for our class, it totally changed. People were buying the book, they were using the book, they thought it was useful. It might be hard to read some of that, but the green section on the right is good. It means they bought the book and they thought it was useful, and hardly any of them were buying the book and not finding it useful. And that was from the $170 book to this one. And if you go back, so I used this for about a year, and then spring semester came by, and the bookstore didn't print enough of these. And we're into about the third week of the semester, and my students were all angry and yelling at me. So I said, I'm just going to take this book and convert it to a website. I know how to do that. So I spent the next couple of months converting it to a website, and I started talking with Derek and Jennifer about the whole digital press thing. And then last summer, I launched it with our CS 101 summer class, pythontextbook.com. So now what started out as one section of 10 students, this current year will have 271 students. And I had to, you were talking about how to find out in the new banner how many students took classes. That was not easy. So you have to like figure out how many seats are left and do a subtraction. But
there's an algorithm somewhere.
There is an algorithm right there. So now we have 271 books, 271 students just this year that are getting a free book. So that probably contributed to the dollar sign.
Absolutely it did. Especially when it's a $170 book.
Yeah. So that's kind of how I've progressed and gotten involved with this.
Sure. I teach in the Department of Entertainment Industry, specifically audio engineering, and a touch of music business, but mostly audio engineering. And we're making albums, so it might as well be music. Now, the problem that faces us, I've been teaching this for 20 years or so, and every single class I've ever taught, there's always a question or a point with which we have to discuss music-based things. So we're not really performance or education as far as music goes, but we are music adjacent in that they have to be able to interface with studio musicians and collaborate with other musicians. And too many of them just didn't understand enough. There's a specific topic that really gives them a problem called harmonic content. And harmonic content is the existence of multiple frequencies that make up the sound quality of one note. And there's hundreds of ways to control that environmentally, technically, mechanically, artistically, but to have those conversations, we have to talk about what a scale is, not make them learn it or do anything like that. So after all of those years of teaching, I got tired of the music theory textbooks that exist because it's kind of similar for musicians that already want to further their knowledge or skill set, or bless their heart, some really, really intense composer theoretician sat down and wrote a music theory book that applies to algebraic forming, nothing that's very practical. So I approached the book from that method, and once we got it live, I began to use it in all of my classes, and automatically I saw an uptake in eye contact and participation and questions, because they had questions to ask now because there was some type of tangible. See, that's the other thing, harmonic content's not tangible. There's harmonic content in the room, but you guys wouldn't know that unless you studied sound. So now that they have something tangible in front of their face, they ask better questions, they're more engaged, they have a higher success rate in all of the things that we ask them to do. And all of my colleagues have integrated the textbook in courses that were appropriate. Music business, obviously not so much, but we do have a course called Musicianship for the Music Studio, which covers basically what I just said. How do you talk to people in the studio? Because you're going to get a mix of musicians. You're going to get garage musicians who never read a thing that can just play. And so their language and vernacular is all over the map, all the way to people who are classically trained that are trying to create some type of demo for performance standards. Well, you have to be able to talk to the garage band musician, you have to be able to talk to the people who are playing Chopin and all points in between. And then there are the people that do go get a theory book that have no training, that read it and misunderstand most of it. And so with a book that focuses on the basics and explaining what something is, application comes later. We are able to further their musical knowledge, which makes them better engineers, which makes them better composers, because they all want to be singer-songwriters at some point. And I don't know how many times someone brought something in and said, I don't know what to do next. And I said, well, what key are you in? I don't know. It just sounded good when I started playing, and I just went with it, So we've been able to educate them musically at an academic level without encroaching on music performance territory. And I didn't do any really cool slides like Dr. Terwilliger did, but what I did do was we have a small department, incestuous almost, so I see all of these kids every single day. So every time I saw them, I would say, what are you guys working on in class? How's it going? And almost all of them mentioned the fact that that book was one of the ways they connected a topic in any of our higher level classes to the things we were trying to discuss with them. And they dug the fact that it was free. That's a whole big deal, because the recording text that we do use is $270. Yeah, and the PDF form doesn't exist anymore. You have to buy the regular one, and if you do get the PDF, it's almost the same amount of money. So we've seen an uptake across the board in confidence when approaching musical things, because that's the biggest thing I ran into. I got hired last year. I'm brand new, by the way. So one of the first things I noticed is when I would talk to the singer-songwriters, there was some trepidation about, I have lyrics, but I don't know how to do you play an instrument? I do, but I don't want to play in front of anyone because I don't know what to do. So now, not only do we educate the engineers, we also have a class that I'm trying to get through the curriculum committee called House Band, where it is a performance-based class, but in the studio. What do you do as a studio musician? What do you do as a live musician? And so they're using that book, and I give them performance assignments, and they have to, and again, we're not analyzing Chopin or Beethoven or, you know, doing some kind of weird analysis, but being a musician means knowing the musical language, and that's basically what we've done, and it has helped everyone in the department.
Ann Blankinship. I teach the new BI through to clinical microbiology course in our department. Microbiology, as with many of the hard sciences, has a special challenge in how do we transition to high flex or whatever model. And so my desire in creating our lab manual was to have something that aligned almost 100% with what my online students were doing compared to my face-to-face students. And microbiology, there's nothing out there that will do that. You can give them a video game simulation, or you can give them a lab in a box and hope they don't infect their families. So we, as Dennis already mentioned, we worked together to basically write a book that would work for both situations and yet could still align with our American Society for Microbiology standards, OER standards, and online education standards. And so that has worked for, I guess this summer will be what, the third summer that we've been teaching online. It's also really great when we have weather days like we've had a couple of weeks. You know, it's like, no big deal, guys. We'll post an online lab. You have everything you need to do this at your home. It's also really great for plugging in different activities that you can't necessarily safely do in a lab where you're playing with microorganisms. I can tell them, this part of your assignment you're going to do at home, and they'll go and record themselves. So for us, it was really an opportunity not only to say, yes, we can do this and prove that we can, but also something that very specifically met our needs within micro.
And just for everybody's knowledge, the lab in a box, how much did the lab in the box, if you required the students to buy that, would that cost?
I think it's anywhere between $180 and $280.
So by doing this, students don't have to purchase the lab in a box.
And the lab, the going rate for microbiology lab textbooks that aren't specific to what we're running is about $120 to $225.
So it's a huge cost savings.
Yes.
I'm Rebecca Linam. I wrote a textbook for German 101. My students actually asked me to write one because our book was so terrible. I looked for an actual book out there, and we were using the best one, which is pretty sad because it cost $250. And there were students who weren't even buying it because it wasn't that useful, and I noticed I was having to make more materials than use them, so I just put them all into a document and decided to write a book. My German 201 encouraged me in that a lot. They really, really wanted to save some money, and so we piloted it this past fall with the 101 classes coming in. And I wrote it so that students won't be afraid to take German, because a lot of people are afraid to take a language. I think especially at UNA, because it's not required for any major to take a language. Some students take it for the BA option, but that's not a requirement for any degree. So I think a lot of them are afraid of it. And I tried to write it so that it explains grammar concepts so that you can understand them and not have to be an expert at language. And I tried to explain it in everyday language so that they don't feel like I'm talking down to them. And so it actually was a very big success. Students are using the book. They tell me it's the only one they use. And they can just refer to the section for the homework. I just copy the link to the section, they go to it, use it. They love giving me feedback on it and what needs to be changed, and can we add more of this, and oh, I see a typo there, and so I just go in and change it right there in class. We doubled our enrollment. We doubled the numbers of majors and minors, which was, for German, that's incredible. We have bigger class sizes than we've ever had in like 20 years. So it was a success, I think. So, and I've written some more, and we're going all the way up through 350 now, I think.
She's being modest. Four titles, 4 German titles. So two are done and are already in our press books, and 2 more are coming.
The students liked it so much, I just figured we would continue it out and make German a low-budget major. So they like that. I've had people tell me they took it because the book was free, and they'll keep taking it because it's free, and they're minoring because it's free. So I don't know, maybe those minors will bump up to a major.
Well, my next question is going to pivot a little bit and look at the North Alabama Digital Press Collier Library. Jim, if you could pull that up in the background as you were talking. This did launch last April with 3 titles. 2 of you offered 2 of those 3 titles. And at this point, we have 6 published and more awaiting, over 10 awaiting, 2 of those Dr. Linam. So my question specifically around the digital press is, what are some of the highlights of your experience in publishing with the digital press for you? And what made you want your content to be there? And we'll start at the same side with Dr.
Yeah, being a computer science, computer nerd, I pretty much put my book on a website and got GoDaddy, my own host and everything. So I kind of did all that first, and then Derek told me about the digital press, and basically is a mirror site for mine, so it might not be this similar to what other people are doing, but the fact that I just handed my content to Derek and he just magically transformed it into a digital book. It was just super easy for me. Now I can share it with other people besides my students, so that's a plus. And I haven't gotten into the dashboard yet to see what kind of visits and traffic I'm getting, but that's certainly an option I want to check out.
I concur. I believe there's a streamlined process there that exists. My wife is a published author. She just released a book, and so I got to watch her literally battle every day for content that needed to be in the book, the form she wanted the content in, all the way down to silly things like we want to put page numbers on the bottom instead of the top. You know, I watched her do that for the better course of probably 2 or 3 years. We did this in a semester, and nobody hassled me at all. It was a streamlined process, and the hassle was, how do I make this better? So that was my highlight, was having, and plus, you know, as an academic, you try to become published to extend your portfolio and whatnot. And even though I have published other things, I can say this was probably the most straightforward process I've encountered to date.
I would agree 100%. It was so easy. I think I had, developed most of my content prior to going to the digital press. So I think for me it was like a week and a half, 2 weeks, just a couple of emails, and it was published. And for me, that's a wonderful opportunity, because here's something that I've invested a lot in, but now here's something that, you know, other microbiology instructors can utilize for their classes. And I'm more than happy to share. I mean, like, let's not fight over content. Let's get it out there in a format that the students will find useful and hopefully save them some resources.
I also found it very easy to get the German textbooks published. Derek uploaded it. I made some changes here and there, but I like the fact that if I need to make changes, I can do that right then, and I don't have to wait for a publisher to go and change it for me. And if the content, if, I don't know, if a new word comes into the German language and I need to put it in the vocab list, I just put it there and it's instant. I don't have to pay a republishing fee or anything. So.
Well, I'm interested in if you've heard comments either internally from students, and a couple of you touched on that already, feedback from them, whether it be cost savings, accessibility, anything, or externally, because I know that we haven't really dived fully into that readership dashboard, but your content's being seen all over the world. We know that it's being turning up in searches all throughout the world, possibly being used at other institutions in educational settings. So have you heard anything externally because of this? And what have you heard feedback-wise from students?
Yeah, feedback from other instructors. I mentioned we had 13 sections offered this current year. I've only taught 2 of them, so all of our sections are taught using my website, and the other instructors appreciate it and like it, and they have ideas too of things that they want to cover that aren't in the book. So like you mentioned, it's easy to update. They'll say, I need this topic, or we need some more problems in this manner. So I'm getting a lot of positive feedback from other instructors. Students obviously love it because it aligns with the course, and it's free, of course. And then there's other people that have contacted me and just want to learn about programming, and I just send them to this website. Here's a free resource to get started, and a lot of times it's just parents or a grant or a workshop I'm working on. A high school teacher wants to learn about programming, so we're finding an audience for this that's not just the UNA student.
Yeah, I am a cheerleader most days. In our industry, networking is a large part of your success. You know, not just telling people what bad stuff other people have done, but also the good things, singing their praises. And this was one of the first things, I don't know if you realize this, this is one of the first things I did upon arrival at UNA, and I was very proud of it. So right away, I wanted to rub it in every other place that I worked. I wanted them to see what was happening. So I posted, I have multiple social media platforms. And because I've been in the music, and my father was a band director, so I started as an ed major. I've got performance degrees and technological degrees, so I've been to a bunch of different schools, too many to list, all over the place. So my social network is vast. And a lot of the people that I taught are now band directors or choir directors, or specifically in Louisiana, the private music school is starting to take on there because they, you know, it's the same story. They cut funding for the arts, but that's a different meeting. But they saw the post. I posted the link so they could get right to it, and I didn't even tell them how to go to the website. I just took the link and posted it. And several of them are using the theory book to teach their beginning students or to advance some of their older students in concepts that are still basic but are used in complex manners. So I know for a fact that several people outside of the UNA system are using the book and accessing it, and I've received some great feedback from all of them. Most of them are just happy to have something to put in front of their kids that is, first of all, cost effective, right? And then secondly, one of the other things I think plays into the last question, we can be expedient without compromising our standards academically. Because that's oftentimes what happens when you try to do something quick, is you have to kind of let something go and be okay with that. Well, we didn't have to do that at all. And because we didn't have to do that, the content is where it should be. So we wrote directly to the student and the learning process, not to a textbook board of some state that exists outside of our purview.
Well, my experience has come the other direction. Over Christmas holiday, I received a contact from one of my former professors as an undergrad who was very interested in checking out this manual that could be used for either way, because they're similar. Sometimes they'll have weather events that cause them to shift as well. So that was very encouraging to me. We are planning an updated version that we're currently working on, so that's kind of what has my attention right now. And as far as my students, well, they're nursing majors. The same semester they have their entrance exams, so anything that is easy for them, they appreciate. For them, they excuse me, they do appreciate that cost savings, because I know for several of them, they've come to me and asked for help with other things that we use in the lecture side of class. So by removing that financial barrier for their lab, then that helps them out quite a bit.
My students have told me that they like the book. I haven't really heard much from outside sources, except for one prospective student for next fall. Her mom came and sat in the class with her last fall. She liked the book and wanted to know where she could buy it, so I just sent her the link, and she's been using it to teach herself German. Students like it because when they miss class, they can, I've got video links in there. They can watch the videos and sort of teach themselves what they miss and read through the instructions and do extra practice with it. There's links to that as well. They told me they like that. They like that it's free, obviously. Other than that, I haven't really heard from anyone outside. I don't know how to get on the dashboard and see how many dates are on it, so I have no clue.
Well,
But it's
Jim and
worked
I
for me.
do, and I can attest to them liking the book. We kind of marveled one day at one of your courses that had, you can see daily the use, and there were literally hundreds of usages
Oh,
in
well,
days.
that's good.
So think about that compared to an unpurchased textbook.
Oh, yeah, I've had a student before tell me that, actually it was this semester, he had signed up for a course as an elective, and he said the textbook was over $300, so he dropped the course and said he was taking another one, he couldn't afford it, so. I know they like free textbooks.
Yeah.
Proof there.
For the sake of time, does anybody in the audience have any questions before we wrap up? I have a final question for you all. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry.
This is more of an open question, but it seems like you've all had a really great experience. Is there anything aspirational you're maybe hoping in regards to your current textbook or the platform, maybe even advertising or marketing for it? Do you want like maybe in terms of from the author perspective as a user, would you be interested in like instruction on using the dashboard, or maybe like infographics about the impact?
I think that would be pretty interesting to see. And I will admit, that's more on me not taking the time to go out and learn how to use the dashboard. And as far as help with marketing or whatnot, I'm just delighted that there's finally a resource out there. And I will say, I am not the best author by any means, and that there are other professors that, probably can modify it and make it look so much better than I ever could. But it's a resource that's useful, and I'm glad it's there to hopefully fill a niche for others.
I would probably add too, because I concur completely, but I would probably add, I would like to see us put a dent in the textbook industry, to be honest. You guys are familiar with an author named Bill Lowe, L-E-O-W? He's a history teacher in Mississippi and northern Tennessee for a while. He taught 9th grade and freshmen. And he wrote a book called Lies My Teacher Told Me. And he covers everything from Helen Keller to FDR to, stuff that you just don't learn. Things like what we know about Christopher Columbus now. And the reason I love this book so much is because it comes with a working bibliography that proves all of his points. And many of those things that he, kind of denounced were things I was taught. And when I read the opening introduction and he describes the process of getting a textbook approved, it has to go through all these different levels, and people who never walk into a classroom, and people who are concerned with politics more than they are education and academics, I would like to put a dent in that. That's where I would like to go. So I'm going to keep writing as many books as I can.
We'll keep publishing.
Yeah.
Thank you all for your time today. We
Thank you.
greatly appreciate it. Appreciate the work you've done. Glad to have it on our platform. Hope to publish more from you all, and hope that you all refer a friend to the platform as well. Thank you.
Thank you.